Amber Heard. In hiding. Sort of. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I undertook a comprehensive series to establish that Amber Heard is a narcissist. I examined a wealth of material over an extended period of time, looking at her behaviours described in a variety of sources to make that determination. Having then made that determination, I'm able to explain to you why she does as she does, why she behaves in the way that she does, all seen through the prism of her narcissism, which of course treated us to such delights as why she shat in the bed, and the fact that her dog stepped on a bee. Face pull. Of course, like many narcissists, particularly those that are thirsty for fuel, although they don't realise it, she keeps popping up in the headlines. And a recent article from The Times, written by Isambard Wilkinson, great name that, isn't it? Isambard Wilkinson, declares Amber Heard has secret life as Mallorcan Calamity Jane. What's all this then? As Dixon of Dock Green might have asked. Amber Heard has been living secretly in a small village in Mallorca under a pseudonym for several months, according to Spanish press reports. Heard, 36, is said to have moved into a house in Costix, in the centre of the island, shortly after losing a US defamation case in June against her former husband, Johnny Depp, who was awarded $10 million in damages. As I explained, that loss caused her substantial wounding and has the consequential impact upon her that there was adverse coverage, which would amount to lashings of challenge fuel, where she would have her sense of control, subconsciously, that sense of control threatened again and again and again, and that she wouldn't be able to assert control over that adverse coverage in a direct fashion. Some of her coterie came out guns blazing in her defence. She'll of course complained about it. She once issued a statement about it via the mountain of evidence comment as an indirect assertion of control over Mr. Depp and of course those that were commenting about her defeat. We of course are aware that some of the stands, as I understand they are now called, that form part of the coterie, even went after people that had been commenting about her case. Tug, for example, a prominent YouTuber. And that was done to nullify the threat to control by proxy. But it would appear that these repeated threats to control that she was not able to deal with through the first assertion of control direct, where she met with minimal success with regard to the indirect assertion of control, caused her to essentially look to more or less go off grid by the third assertion of control, going into a position of withdrawal. This effectively is a little bit like the narcissist putting his or her hands over their eyes and saying, if I can't see you, that must mean you can't see me. And thus it achieves that third assertion of control. You see, the second and third assertion of control are commensurate with the principle of flecteus and aqueos aperos, acheronta movibo, which roughly translated means, if I cannot move heaven, I will raise hell. I.e., if I cannot directly control you in your world by making you do something or stopping you doing something, then my narcissism allows me to create an alternative kingdom, an alternative world, where I am the ruler, and thus I gain that all-important control through the second, indirect, or the third, withdrawal method. And that's why we always get the control one way or the other. And thus it would appear, according to this news report, that Amber Heard, her narcissism has selected the third assertion of control, and in essence, she ran away over the ocean. A little bit similar to another narcissist that we're familiar with. According to The Times, she has rented the large property under the pseudonym of Martha Jane Canary, the name of Calamity Jane, the 19th century American frontierswoman, sharpshooter and storyteller. A local newspaper El Diario del Mallorca noted, "The choice of this identity, which appears at the entrance of her new Mallorcan home, draws much attention, especially as Johnny Depp always maintained that his family traced their roots to ancient Native American tribes and that his great-great-grandmother was Cherokee." Now, of course, what she's done is she's asserted control by going into a position of withdrawal, moving across the ocean to nullify the repeated coverage that would threaten her sense of control. But her narcissism is such that it can't help but try and flip the bird at Johnny Depp by basically making a reference which might be picked up upon in respect of cocking a snook still at Johnny Depp. Rather than move on and think, well, I've lost, and there we are, her narcissism won't allow that. Each and every time she happens to think about Depp, or she's reminded of him, she sees something that reminds him of her of him, then he comes up on the radar. And he poses a threat to control. If anything relates to her court defeat comes up on the radar, it's a threat to control. And therefore, she sought, or rather her narcissism has sought, to protect her by this blanket approach by moving her to Mallorca, but it still can't help but try and triangulate Depp in the way that it does with this identity. The article continues. The house where it is claimed Heard lives with her baby daughter Una Page and her partner Bianca Butti, Chip, or Bacon to her friends, I guess, a cinematographer, belongs to the family of Maria Antonia Munar, a local politician jailed for 14 years for corruption. Birds of a feather, huh? Heard and her partner have been seen taking the baby out to a children's park or loading shopping bags at a store. The village is off the usual tourist track, observed El Pei, which added, Amber Heard does not stand out among the thousands of foreigners who colonise the streets of the most touristic towns of the largest of the Balearic Islands. The actress is disguising herself as a visitor in an ocean of English-speaking tourists. And accordingly, that enables her to, in effect, blend in. Of course, she's not going to notice, and it's been reported on. This, of course, demonstrates the retreat from the threats to control, therefore nullifying that threat to control over and over again by basically staying away so that she's unlikely to see as much in terms of headlines unless she purposely seeks them out, that she's not going to be reminded of things that would remind her of him, i.e. being in and around the old homes, etc., old stomping grounds. And so her narcissism has placed her into a position of retreat. But what about the comments below the line? How is Amber Heard being viewed by the readership? Richard writes, leave her alone. Good grief. This isn't news. You are or claim to be a quality newspaper. Behave like one. This is gutter, stalker journalism. Miscontent. Leave the woman alone. Why publish this? Tim replies, because she's so appalling. Treetops. Well, that's her cover blown. For what ends? Vernon Davies. It was the Spanish media who blew her cover. Read the article. Tempest Hardaway. World News, utter drivel. HP, leave her alone to live in peace. Tim says, no, she tried and lied to ruin JD's life. Richard Ingram, I'm no fan of Heard, but for goodness sake, does the Time really have to keep dropping to the depths of the sun? Leave the woman in peace. Her career has been well and truly buggered by that libel case. She needs no more punishment. Steve Bull, gutter journalism. Who cares about this? Chelsea 4130. Once upon a time, the Times, or internationally known as the Times of London, was the epitome of quality journalism and stood out as one of the leading great newspapers in the world. Sad to see that it has sunk to tabloid status, judging by the standards of this article. Berliner. I agree with you. There are so many good stories out there. Me Again, Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt, Heard, and the underwire bra Kardashian are not amongst them. There was a times when journalism wished to make a positive impact in the world. Professor K.W. Snilpin. I'm no fan of Heard, but this doxing is inappropriate. I'm David. That's the end of her secret life, then. Leave her alone. JM. Leave her be. Let her enjoy life. Carmen Rubel. Completely unacceptable article. Shame on you. Denise Woodcock. Exactly. She's chosen to live anonymously. You give away where, under what name, etc. Tom M. I'm reminded of the scene in Lost in Translation, where the actress character, played by Anna Faris, thinks it's simply fabulous that she has had the intellect and inspiration to check into the hotel under the pseudonym of Evelyn Waugh, not realising that this was a man. Peter Shaw, she should be deported. Colin Arson, the purpose of this story is... Strike a pose. Meanwhile, in other world news, the Kerch Bridge in Crimea has been destroyed by a massive explosion, drastically impacting Putin's war effort. Not that you know that by reading the Times. Fermat responds, Peter Conradi's article on the Kerch Bridge mishap has been up since 11:15. Throwback, leave her in peace. Still, the Spanish press blew her cover. Essentially, most people taking the view that because she's retreated from public life, that she ought to be left alone. Contrast her approach to that of Harry's wife, where Harry's wife repeatedly has to keep appearing. Amber Heard's narcissism has chosen, at least for the time being, that she retreats and keeps her head down. That's its way of nullifying the repeated threats to control that exist. She'll, of course, be receiving fuel from a small fuel matrix of those around her, friends, family members, her partner, and, of course, that will enable her access to character traits and residual benefits. But for now, her narcissism has chosen to adopt a relatively low profile, preferring to nullify the threats to control in the manner described. A contrast, of course, as I mentioned, with Harry's wife. And it's interesting, of course, notwithstanding the vitriol that was directed at Amber Heard for her behaviour, the distinction is here that whilst these people are not supporters of her, they recognise that she ought to be left alone because she's chosen that to be the case rather than being exposed. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.